to survive in the corporate world, you must think like a man, act like a lady, look like a young girl, and work like a horse. So that is where we start from when it comes to the challenges, because those are the stereotypical expectations when you get into the workforce.
So, welcome to Blue Circle, everybody, and thank you for joining in. It's such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone, our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience they bring in. And thank you to our distinguished audience. We've received over 150 registrations, most of whom are COC, EXOs, and senior leaders. Many of them are our members and guests as well. Some are repeat visitors, so that is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogue through the online modes as well. For those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an exclusive community and ecosystem which is curated for business leaders across four fundamental sectors, which are healthcare, e-mobility, energy, and real estate. Very soon, we're going to be adding four new exciting sectors, which are aerospace, defense, retail, BFSI, and logistics. Um, we also present socioeconomic insights, which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. Now, in response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series, our digital publication. And in addition to this, and you'll be happy to know that very soon we're launching a unique exclusive digital platform curated for leaders, somewhat like the sector specific LinkedIn for leaders, wherein we will present leaders with the opportunity to connect with leaders just as themselves, also house high quality curated content, meaningful conversations like the ones we do, and also access to certain business opportunities in these sectors. Those leaders who are interested, please do write to us. We've already begun our outreach and we have close to 3,000 senior leaders who signed up in the last couple of months. And today, for our last session as part of Women's Leadership Week, we're privileged to have super achievers who've joined in for our healthcare circles discussion. Madam Curie, unable to enroll in a regular institution of higher education because she was a woman, went on to doing pioneering work in radioactivity and became the first and only woman to win the Nobel Prize twice. Taking inspiration from her and also inspiration from leaders on the panel, we're here to discuss the achievements of women in the healthcare space, the challenges faced by them, the way forward so that their ilk and the industry marches ahead. The topic for the session is women leaders driving innovation in healthcare. And now, in the best interest of time, I will just briefly mention the names and designations of the panelists who've joined us. We have with us Dr. Anjali Kulkarni, VP Clinical Operations, Arkanos Healthcare. Ms. Meena Ganesh, co-founder, MD and CEO, Portia Medical. Dr. Sunita Maheshwari, Chief Dreamer and Loop Closer, Teleradiology Solutions and RX DX Healthcare. Dr. Vasundhara Atre, Director Medical Operations, Otis Healthcare. And the chair and moderator for the session is Mr. Pavan Chaudhary, best-selling author, public intellectual, CEO of French multinational, and sits on several boards across the country. Welcome, ma'ams and sirs, for joining in today. And I request Mr. Chaudhary to please chair and moderate the session, sir.
Thank you very much, Siddharth, and it's a pleasure to be with you all these super achievers with us today. I am reminded of a dialogue which John Stuart Mill had with his detractors. John Stuart Mill, as the audience would know, was the number one emancipator of women. He brought the women's equality to the forefront for the first time. So when he was asked that how many doctors are women, how many women have made great doctors, he said, how many women have you allowed to be educated in medical schools? He said that the first gynecological doctor, which was a woman in Greece about 400 years back, you sentenced her to death for practicing medicine. But her patients rallied behind her and did not allow that death sentence to take effect. So that means there was surely talent available, but it was not nurtured. They said that naturally the woman doesn't have these talents. And John Stuart Mill said, what you are saying natural is actually customary. It is customary for women to not practice medicine. That is why you are not exposed to her natural talent in medicine. The British Queen is, you accept because it is customary to accept her in that position. You are not clamoring to have a king. So those were the points where all this debate began, and we have traveled a long distance. However, how long is what we want to discuss today first, and then we will come to what are the unique strengths which women bring to healthcare. But first, what are the challenges which women face in healthcare? And let me start with Vasundhara. Vasundhara, what's your take on that?
So let me say, to survive in the corporate world, you must think like a man, act like a lady, look like a young girl, and work like a horse. So that is where we start from when it comes to the challenges, because those are the stereotypical expectations when you get into the workforce. Typically, if I look at it in terms of the challenges, we are all aware of the fact that there is a stereotypicality to what you would expect a woman in healthcare to be doing. You would expect her to be, if you look at nursing, for example, you would expect more of female nurses to be in the task force. However, if I look at it from the perspective of leaders in the system, how many of your CEOs of the hospitals or healthcare organizations are actually women? Now, that is a question we need to ask ourselves. Is it that women are only good enough to do behind the curtain jobs, or does it have to be faceless jobs that they need to be doing? And that is the strength that lies with them. The other thing is, it is very interesting to see how women are actually breaking the glass ceilings today. When I started off about 30 years back in medicine, it was very unlikely to come across a female cardiac surgeon or a neurosurgeon. Today, I'm very happy to say that we actually have 3 of our MCH students who are actually doing neurosurgery. And it is so heartening to see the change that has happened over a period of time. Interestingly, when I actually started off on this journey, when I was doing my cardiac anesthesia, I had one of my surgeons I was freelancing with. And when it came to discussion about money, let me tell you, we ladies are really bad at it. So he started off and he came to a very ridiculous amount. And I just sort of looked at him very wonderingly. I said, "Are you serious?" He says, "Vasundhara, what is the problem? Your husband is working. He gets a salary. You're only here because you want to pass your time." And I thought that was very, very unfair, because in those days, the cardiac surgeries would go on for hours at length. And you would spend as much time, if not more, than the surgeon in the operating room. So it was very, very, that was the first time that I took a step back and said, okay, what is happening here? I am a professional and please treat me like one. Then, of course, we have the challenges that we do have duality of roles that we do play. We are mothers, we are wives, we are daughters-in-law, we are daughters, and of course, we are professionals. And when we come to work, we are professionals. But there are times that we do run into conflict where the situations are concerned. I still remember I was looking after the intensive care at that time. And normally I would go in for all the night calls and the intubations and ventilations. And that night my son was running actually 104 temperature. And I was cold sponging him. And this was like around 1:30 in the morning. I get a call from the hospital saying that there is a 24-year-old boy who has met with a road traffic accident and requires an emergency ventilation. Probably we may have to take him up for surgery. I handed over the cold compressors to my husband. And the next thing I know, my son was clinging on to my night clothes. And he says, and he was almost delirious. He says, "Mama, every time you tell me that your patients are sick and you need to attend to them, Today, please tell them that I am not well and you cannot come. Choices. And of course, on that day, it was again the patient who won, because that person too was somebody's son, and he was actually in a life and death situation. So yes, those are some of the challenges. And I think most importantly, this bonding that is required when you're working, especially with men. And the expectation is you can be yelling at them and whatever else happens at the workplace, it is very easy for men to put their hand around the shoulder of their colleague and take them out for an after work beer. Now, if we start doing that, there will be a lot of boundaries that would people feel they would be able to cross with you. And especially when you're working in a mixed environment, you have to be very, very careful that you draw the Lakshman Rekha, so to say, draw the line and tell people what can and cannot be done. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Pawan.
Very, very beautifully started. And you have, in the end, you have said that if you were to do the same as a man would do, many eyebrows will be raised.
Absolutely.
And so the challenges which you mentioned make your job much harder. And my admiration for this team of this panel of achievers goes higher. That you have actually you have actually done much better than a man to reach above a man in many cases. So great points. Let me come to Meena. Meena, you have been an entrepreneur and you are also scaling new heights in the healthcare sector. What are some other challenges you think that women face in healthcare sector?
Yeah, thank you, Pawan. Pleasure to be here. I'll just go back a little in my history to talk about a little bit of familial discrimination. I had a medical admission, but at that point in time, my family felt very strongly that it was a very long journey and that was not fit for a woman. So, hey, that's okay. I'm here again now, back in the healthcare sector. It's a turn of events and I'm back here in a different avatar. So that's fine. But the fact is that right from childhood and early education, women can get pressures which are very different from men. But now talking about my last about 8 odd years journey as an entrepreneur in the healthcare sector. I've been an entrepreneur for 21 years, of which the last 8 years have been in the healthcare sector. So one of the things that was a huge challenge for me was that I was bringing in a completely new model into the healthcare sector. Healthcare was primarily a facility-based care. And what we were talking about was home care, digital care, care outside of hospitals. And that was not something which was seen as play for an organized sector. It was not seen as something that is a legitimate part of the healthcare system. In this context, it made it even more difficult because as a woman leader, trying to reach out to a lot of senior men leaders in various, because ecosystem. In the healthcare sector, one thing was very clear to me: either you work with everybody or you're such an outcast that you just cannot get by. So I had to figure out how I could build those networks with the leaders of the various healthcare institutions in this country, most of which were men, and hence they had their own male network. How do you break through those male networks to get in and build those comfortable relationships which are professional yet open enough to allow you to experiment, to allow them to experiment along with you, because everybody was on a new journey. Home care was not, and absolutely not something which was known in India, though globally it's a pretty large part of the whole ecosystem. So that was the first entry into very difficult environment into which I had to make my breakthrough. The second, of course, a lot of women entrepreneurs struggle to raise money in the highly male-dominated private equity. That said, I must admit that I have not faced that, because by the time I got into being an entrepreneur, which was about 20 years back, I had already got about 15 years of experience prior to that. So I did not come in as a young 25-year-old or somebody who's in the prime of their youth, and a lot of questions then get asked about your seriousness, about your commitment, about your ability to run the long course in this. I did not face that, but I have seen that being faced by a number of young women entrepreneurs. Third was that, especially during the start of COVID, I started to reach out to a lot of state governments to see how we could help them with the management of COVID, especially around home care of COVID positive patients. Extremely challenging because all the senior bureaucrats are men. Very, very difficult to break into that circle. Interestingly, the solution was that I have some friends who are women, who are senior bureaucrats. They were my friends. So through them is how I reached to the male bureaucrats who were in the position of decision making, who had to allow a private entity like me to come and talk about a solution, which then became really mainstream. We supported about 300,000 home isolated COVID positive patients, and hardly 2.5% had to be hospitalized. All the others were cared at home, and which obviously reduced the huge burden that all the facilities were facing. So the fact is that you need to use various means and methods to reach the right people so that you're able to move your agenda ahead. That still is true, even though I have a very, very large number of years behind me in terms of my experience. So that still doesn't change at every day and any age. You still need that.
Wow. So what you've said is that there was this almost Chakravyuh of male network, multi-stakeholder network, which you had to breach. And also you've alluded to the fact that when you came with this novel idea, it took you double the effort to prove to people that you will be able to run the long course and erect this entire edifice, which was only there in your mind at that time. And the third thing which you have said is that these lady bureaucrats really came to your help.
Yes.
And there is a study which says that women nurture creativity more. And they have reached that conclusion by looking at kids who have been raised by women alone, by single parent women. So I feel that on all those fronts, you got a lot of help from these bureaucrats, and all the points which you have made are extremely relevant, and I can resonate with them. So coming to Sunita, what would you like to add to the challenges which Vasundhara and Meena have already mentioned?
No, it's interesting because you'd think that in healthcare, as you said, there's so many nurses, and to go back to what you said at the beginning about the lack of female doctors, and that has changed dramatically in the last years. When I went to med school, 30% of my class were doctors. My daughter just graduated from JIPMER, and 55% of her class were females. So I think that there are, and of the nurses, as we know, 90% are women. Having said that, I think I'd echo a little bit of what Vasundhara said about some of the challenges that women face in healthcare, even though they're today welcomed into healthcare because of, several reasons. One of the challenges really has to do with the nature of healthcare, especially if you're in service delivery, because, 90% of the work in healthcare ultimately is about service delivery. And so you have long hours at work, you have to go in and round on Sundays. And me, specifically, if I looked at myself as a doctor, practicing doctor, and my challenges as a pediatric cardiologist were very much linked to those, those 18 years. I mean, we all have uteruses, and then we have kids, and then we have to handle children and working. And so a lot of interesting challenges. I mean, my daughter at 7 told me, how come the kids at the hospital are more important than me? And for me, that was a wake up moment, because I was like, you're right, I'm going to have to think about that. And I went back to my boss, and I said, I can't be coming in at 6 a.m. and leaving at 10 p.m. 6 days a week and rounding every Sunday morning. So he said, okay, you leave at 4 o'clock. I said, Chief, at 4 o'clock, there are 25 patients outside my OPD. I can't say, okay, now, I'm a 9 to 5 person, off I go. And so, I did a lot of soul searching. My solution was to take Wednesday half day. I would take half days off on Wednesday and half days off on Saturday and make sure I was there, at the bus stop, bicycling around the neighborhood and figuring out, I think all women on this panel and all women who've been through this have figured out that kind of method to get balance. I think the other challenge I would say, and coming from what Meena talked about, I'm not funding, but just generally women and negotiating. So when I moved back from the US, we were at Yale University at New Haven. And when we moved back, I definitely did not know how to negotiate. So I joined a local hospital in Bangalore. I was getting 1/4 the salary of my male counterpart who went to University of Pittsburgh, not Ivy League. And I was definitely, we were the same batch. I was at 1/4. So anyway, we get offered to move to another hospital. And even when we're moving to the second hospital, I don't negotiate. So I joined there now at 1/4 the salary again. And I think as women in healthcare and perhaps women everywhere, but ultimately you realize in healthcare, you are shoulder to shoulder with the men. I mean, we are doing exactly what they're doing, same competency, same domain. So I guess learning to stand up, learning to speak out, learning to make sure things work for what we need are challenges that women face in every aspect, but particularly in healthcare because of its timings, because of its unpredictable nature. You can get called in at any time. If you want to, I love to teach. All our continuing medical educations are on Sundays. So I would take my kids on the bus to Bijapur and they would sit at the back of the conference hall with a little doodle pen while I did my sessions. And then we would go, and see the Gol Gumbaz. So, learning to kind of handle both. The good thing is at some point, I think those familial things sort of wind down and you're able to then use your skill sets and be equal to any other man in the workplace.
I think you beautifully brought out the point that healthcare also has its challenges for women, but women have been much better accepted in healthcare.
Yes.
One of the challenges which healthcare brings, which post-COVID particularly we are realizing is not there endemic to all sectors, is this 9 to 5 routine or being physically present at your place of work has got shattered post-COVID. Perhaps after Adam Smith, who brought about his theory of industrialization, and industries came about thereafter, and factories started, and factories needed us to be at work from 9 to 5. That 9 to 5 thing just became the template, which became the governing template even when it was not necessary. And now today it is getting broken. But in healthcare, it's still, particularly in intensive care, etc., except for some specialities like dermatology or the non-emergent specialities, not non-emergency specialities, it will still present that challenge before women. And the second point, which you of course mentioned, was the hustling instinct. Perhaps the stereotypes which Vasundhara referred to also include that women often are trained to keep their needs subordinate to the needs of other, go more for a collegial kind of existence rather than asking for your right. Very important point and great point, Sunita. Let me now come to Anjali. Anjali, what would you like to add to the challenges? And thereafter, I will come to Vasundhara again. Vasundhara, there is a question, and which also was a part of what I was thinking to take this discussion towards, that how to battle the discrimination at work. What tips can you give to budding doctors or healthcare professionals? I'm coming to you with that question, and we will build on that with the other panelists. Anjali.
So, hello everybody. So, I'm a trained oncologist who joined healthcare IT after a brief clinical practice. So, it was a total surprise for the technology people to welcome a doctor, in their campus. So I joined in the Siemens Healthcare as a domain expert. So as usual, I was kept at a distance, telling it's a doctor, and she will get to know each other by herself. So I was not very much welcomed, and it took time for me to get integrate into that ecosystem. So that was the first challenge, in fact. And it slowly took time for me. And the one more important, the challenge which I came across is the stereotyping at such corporate places. If there is some meeting which is at odd hours in night 9 p.m. because we work across globally, so there are few customers in Germany, UK, European timelines or US timeline. Somehow the women are not invited, thinking they might have to cook at home, they might have to take care at home. So I had to make a special mention that don't look at whether I'm a woman, and you have to invite me for each and every meeting, and if I'm really unable to attend it, I will send a note back to you that I'm not able to attend. So this kind of stereotypical assumptions are made for women in the corporate world also. So that one was a big challenge. Second one was travel. So sometime there will be early 8 a.m. meeting in AM. So going from Bangalore to Delhi early morning flight. So I will be automatically not considered for that meeting. So again, you have to stand up and say, no, I'm ready to go a night before, or I will take 5 a.m. early morning flight and I will reach Delhi on time for the meeting. So sometime I think you have to make yourself loud and clear, and you have to say that it's me and it's my contribution which matters more than my gender or my background. So that one was one challenge. Another one challenge was there will be a lot of these IIM courses or many professional certifications. So somehow I think I will not blame anybody, or I'm not sure what is the reason, but somehow we are always we are always on the waiting list. We are never in those top 10 to be sent to IIM or, any of that certification. So again, we have to make it clear that I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to cross function from, different roles and responsibilities across the corporate sector. And then I think things do change and people do listen to you. Similarly, there are some roles like sales and marketing. They think women are not a great salesperson, as Sunita said, and even Meena and Vasundhara mentioned that we are not great negotiator. We don't fight for our own salaries. Forget about fighting for our product selling out in the market. So in that sense, they think that sales and marketing is not for women. Let them do a domain work. So again, then we have to make sure that I can do it. Give me a chance. At least teach me the skills. Let me go out in the market and try to do it once, and then you can decide further where I'm fit for that or not. So there are some of these challenges which are there, I think, culturally, socially. So as a woman, I think we have to make it clear and loud to everybody that I'm open for everything. I'm open for experimenting with my roles, responsibilities, my duration of work. And then I think things might become easy for most of the women.
Great point. So you have said that sales and service angle in healthcare is very important, which requires travel. And this travel can also become a little unsafe in places about which we have to be cautious. The whole community has to be civic educated, and better sanitation, better safety facilities should be provided. But it never came between you and your ability to do the job. The other interesting point which you brought in is that these courses at IIMs, which women were kept in the last row to go to, or they had the last position in the row to go there. Perhaps Meena clairvoyantly knew that if she becomes a doctor, she will not be allowed to go to IIM. So she went to IIM Calcutta, is now a distinguished alumnus from there. So That was on a lighter note. Coming to Vasundhara. Vasundhara, this question which is coming from a budding professional, budding doctor stroke professional. So how does a median woman respond to that? You are, of course, as I said, a Mount Everest climber. She is asking from a median woman's point of view, how does she respond to that? And on a similar note, I've got one question on my WhatsApp, which is saying, microaggressions and incivility towards women is more common. Meena, I will come to you with that. How to handle microaggressions and incivility, which may be more common towards women. Vasundhara.
So, Pawan, what I would actually say is that to some extent, we set our own ceilings. We decide that, we cannot or should not be doing more than something. I think the first thing as working professionals is we need to understand that we have come with a lot of strengths. All we have to do is actually not undersell ourselves, make sure that we utilize all the advantages that we have as a woman. We are intuitive, we are empathetic, we are problem solvers, we multitask extremely well. We make good budgets, we run our households extremely, we run very tight ships actually. So we need to actually leverage all our strengths at the workplace. We have to stop underplaying our strengths. And most importantly, we should not be setting our ceilings. There is no ceiling. Everything is possible and there is no limit even to the sky. There is space beyond that. So most importantly, please keep reinventing yourself. Like has been very rightly put out by Anjali. Let us not say that this much is enough or I cannot do more than this. So that would be where I come from, Pawan. I think we leverage our strengths. We make what we do important in the workplace. We use everything that we have and do well as a woman in the workplace. I don't think you can fail after that.
Pawan, if I can interject here, because I saw the question was from a doctor asking, how can doctors break the discrimination? So I loved what Dr. Vasundhara said. So as a fellow doc, I had, when I started taking this half-day Wednesday off, every Tuesday night, my male colleague would tell me, oh, tomorrow is your half vacation. Every Tuesday night. And I just realized I had to use humor. So every Tuesday evening, he would tell me that. And I would say, no, doctor, tomorrow I'm half-day mommy. So I, put it back. And I think using humor in the workplace, because there are these things that come up, these little barbs, and we get really like we feel we're being held back. So kind of using humor and accepting it and honesty. And, I had this boss who used to, he was in this coffee room till 7 o'clock having coffee and reading Times of India, and then we'd go on rounds. So I just told him, sir, this is not working for me. I have a small kid. I've done my rounds. These are my patients. These are the two issues. I've told the night duty guy, and this is how it's going to work for me. And I was a junior doctor at that time. I was just out of training. And he was so taken aback. He didn't know what to say. He said, okay. So I think sometimes just a mix of humor and honesty and putting it out there on, I can do my best. And I would say the third is we need to get good at what we do. I think, if we get as good as we can at knowing our patients and what's happening with them and our subject, we're able to kind of break past those, because then you're really merit against merit.
Absolutely. Beautiful point made. That I think it extends from the point which Vasundhara was making. Vasundhara said that we should leverage our strengths. She alluded to the fact that we should not be apologetic about them. If we are sensitive, if a woman is sensitive, she should bring out why sensitivity is required in the hospital or in healthcare, and so on, rather than trying to be a measure equal to the man on every trait of his, which is a losing battle. And the second point which you said, I very well understand where you're coming from, and it is many a time humor is a better repartee than the meanest answer you can think of. and it also does not leave a scar. It does not make a mountain of out of a molehill. They say that कुछ अंदाज से और कुछ नजरअंदाज से और कुछ मजाक से handle कर लेना चाहिए. And in fact, there is also some way of sharing your own fault map. Everybody has a fault map. How we can humorously share our fault maps with others makes them that much more receptive to us, and does not make them think of that as a big spike on us. You know, so great point, superb. Meena. Meena, you're on mute.
Yeah, I've unmuted. Please go ahead with your question.
So the point was, we were talking about incivility and microaggressions.
Sure.
One of the readers on my WhatsApp, one of the viewers who's not appearing here, he has mentioned this, that microaggressions and incivility towards women are more than towards men. How do women handle, how should women handle microaggressions and incivility? One of the ways, by the way, came from Sunita. What are your prescriptions?
So one of the things that I have tried in my life is to stand for something, to be very, very clearly seen as an expert in some area or the other, to be invaluable to the organization, to always make that little extra beyond whatever is expected of me, whether it is in a corporate environment or in a startup environment. Be known as a beacon of something, and always be seen as doing beyond what is expected of you. And what happens is that you sort of create a little kavach around you, a kavach of competence, a kavach of something which is desirable in lots of teams. People want you there, so they can keep doing the barbs, but ultimately you make such a big difference in whatever you do that they have to accept you. After some time, people just give throwing those barbs because they know that not having you in the team, not having you as a part of their organization or department or whatever it is actually detrimental to them. Why should they do that to you? So that is one thing that I learned over the last many, many years of my career. And this was particularly, while not very specifically relevant, where in the last 7 years, because I'm already pretty old, right? So who's going to throw a barb at me? I'm an old woman, if I may say so. So if that's not the case, but throughout the career, in all the many years of various roles that I have carried on, especially wherever I have been part of a multinational, those barbs are even stronger when you're working cross-country. I was with a UK retailer, and I was the Indian entity head. I was the CEO of the Indian entity head, full white male on the other side. And there is this brown woman who's trying to take away their jobs and bring it to India. So can you imagine a worse situation? So they would use every quiver in their entire, every arrow in their quiver would be used from various angles to bring you down to size. They don't want their jobs to go. They don't want the jobs to go to India. And they certainly don't want a woman taking away their jobs. So everything was used. So one of the things that one of the directors told me, Meena, the best thing you do is that you disarm us. When you come in, you talk with so much humility, so much compassion, and so much of collegiality. I can't shout at you. I can't throw a barb at you. After some time, it's just not worth it my while, because you seem to be a different kind of a person. So creating that little shield around you with a certain aura, persona, which is a combination of your capability, your personality, and your willingness to be always pleasant has worked for me.
Excellent points. So competence and humility, to the extent that nobody wants to dismount you from the horse because you are no longer coming on the horse. You know, you are coming walking humbly. And the last, of course, you said was disarmers of that kind. Great points. Now let me come to Anjali, and Anjali, let us go to the second question, which is second observation, which has come from Colonel Sridharan, where he says ultimately that women are more sincere and efficient in their work and are able to manage their families equally efficiently. The gender inequality will end one day very soon. I have some observations on the last part, but let us come to the first part, that women are more sincere and honest. And some studies also, recently a study by McKinsey also says that in healthcare specifically, the attrition rates of women are lower than that of men. So they are surely more loyal, and many times they are also seen as more dedicated. What are the other strengths you think women bring to the healthcare space which are unique? Anjali.
Yeah. So good question. I think the another biggest strength we bring is our inclusive nature, right? And that little bit inclusivity of a person from a both personal aspect of a resource, and the same time the professional aspect. So see, somebody comes to me and say, though I know the project deadline is tomorrow, I have to go to a parents teacher meeting. So I will say, okay, attend that and come back and finish your work. So that kind of little angle and inclusive behavior from women, of course, helps a lot when you especially become a woman leader. Second one is being a little more curiosity. So when I was doing a clinical adoption, when we have to visit hospital with this all new technologies in AI and analytics, then little more curiosity to go to the medical records department, which is actually not required, or little more curiosity to go to pathology department and see how the work happens there. Can there be any input to our current function of clinical adoption? So I think this curiosity also helps in some way, which is always there as a woman in us, as a natural gift from the God. And I think yeah, these are the main ones in addition to the whatever was mentioned before, I think.
Great points. Women are curious by nature, and mythologically also, and I say that on the lighter vein, woman was most interested in what is there in that apple. Okay, so but you are saying, what you are saying is absolutely correct. Women are more curious, and perhaps if they are given those opportunities to learn, they will be on the front places in the rows to learn and further increase their qualifications. Coming to Vasundhara. Vasundhara, what would you think are other advantages or unique strengths which women bring to the healthcare space?
Like I mentioned earlier, I think the main thing is that we are very intuitive. We are intuitive by nature. We tend to read between the lines. So we tend to pick up, and we are very sensitive to the atmosphere around us. I think that helps a lot when it comes to building and bonding relationships with our colleagues or our juniors, even for that matter. By nature, think about it. Women are actually born caregivers. They are empathetic. They are sensitive. They are able to actually resolve issues in very different ways. Sometimes it is not about what is written in the rule book. It is more about a conversation, about trying to understand where the person in front is coming from, that actually helps us to resolve a lot of the concerns and issues in the workplace. More importantly, we have this habit of thinking out of the box. Maybe because of the multiple roles that we play, we have a greater, I would say, outlook on different ways of solving concerns or issues. And we tend to use them appropriately or inappropriately, but we manage to get the job done. So I think that is the important part of it. And also, we are very used to multitasking. We would be, you'd be having the packing of the lunches going on. Simultaneously, you would be handling a situation in the hospital on the phone, while you will make sure that the school books are being put into the bag. So, and the right kind of checks are being written out, or the newspaper is being taken, or giving instructions to the maid. It's like, if you look at the morning in the house, I think there are so many things, and we bring that to the workplace. We don't necessarily need to finish one job before we go to the next one. So I think that is a very big advantage that we bring in. And like I said, everything else that we stand for.
Excellent point. Sensitivity, empathy, born caregiver, and patients. All patients are different. So you know how to improvise, and multi-stakeholder management, and healthcare is multi-stakeholder management. And great points, very good points. What else? I'll go to Sunita now. What are the other advantages women bring in? And then I'll come to Meena. Meena, there is another question which I think you're best suited to answer. What are the avenues to overcome the funding challenges for women? Women who do not have illustrious background, an illustrious background like you did when you started. How can that kind of woman get a funding? Sunita.
Well, I think Anjali and Vasundhara covered, most of it. And I think certainly in healthcare, one needs to bring empathy. And I guess we women feel we're more empathetic. Whether the men agree or not, I don't know. But I would say, to add on to what they said, that I think one thing that women are good with dealing with is sort of unpredictability. And healthcare is very unpredictable. I mean, you may have a complication in the OR, you may have a reaction, you may suddenly, like yesterday, we had 250 patients show up for vaccination all at the same time. And, there's chaos. So there's healthcare is not, it's not that you can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, that I set my servers and everything will work fine. And I think that's where I see women have a little bit of an edge. We can, handle that unpredictability and go with it. I would add to what they said one more thing, and this is from pure personal experience, because I seem to be surrounded by these women and we call ourselves the CID agents. So we are the CID agents in our organization. We are always somehow, and maybe it comes from what Anjali said about being curious, but we walk around, we talk, and we will somehow unearth all that stuff that's happening that shouldn't be happening. That the tech has not been putting their gloves on or whatever, all the things that can impact or like the guy who's supposed to answer the phone and give an appointment was actually not giving the appointments but saying he had answered. So we are CID agents, and I am blessed in our organization we have 4 women CID agents. And I think in healthcare, because so much is, there are so many variables in healthcare. Every patient is different. That you can while you can make some things system based, and definitely the more processes you have and the better systems you have, the better you will do. But there are certain things that depend on people sticking to those processes and doing those processes day in and day out and day in and day out, and doing the process even when there is a variable. And I think that's where this nature of digging deep, figuring out and kind of figuring out why things didn't happen and making it better. That's a trait I guess men have too, but I just happen to see a lot of CID agents. So I would say that's one quality that helps in healthcare.
I think beautifully put. And let me tell you, you have invoked my courage also, because when Anjali spoke about this, that women are more curious, I wanted to share my experience on a board, which is India's largest multinational in the field of medical diagnostics. There, the chairman and is a gentleman, and the wife is the vice chairman. And many a time we find that whenever we are operationally stuck on some point, she comes out with a clever stratagem and handles everything. So I was asking my friend, the husband, the chairman, how does she manage? So he said, she's very snoopy. She finds out, she finds out where the problem is. She has this informal network of communication within the organization. We, because of our male, let me say, ill-deserved egos, we do not have that fluidity which she has. So that is how he defined her. And beautifully put, Sunita. Thank you very much for allowing me, for paving the way for me to share to share this.
After this panel, we'll do some training for you on becoming CID agent.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. I would love to do that. We on another similar chat we were having on electric vehicles, or it was renewable energy, where similarly a panel of leading ladies from the sector were there. I was sharing the again biblical parable that God made the world in 6 days, and first day he was making stones, then insects, then animals, then birds, and finally he came out with his most refined creation, which was the man on 6th day. But with man also he was not satisfied, so he took a bone from his body, from his rib, and made a woman. So in that sense, woman is a more refined creation than man. And a man really becomes complete when he also recognizes his feminine polarity. So feminine polarity is not only this compassion and sensitiveness, I think it is a little bit snoopiness also. So I'll come to you for to learn that. Meena, incivility and microaggressions, women are more, have to more face that. How does a woman handle that?
So Pavan, I think
Sorry. That was the last question. What are the avenues to overcome the funding challenges? Sorry.
No issues, Pavan. But before I get to that, I want to say something about one of the superpowers that women have. I think while Sunita and I think probably Vasundhara also mentioned, maybe Anjali as well, that we are not very good at negotiation. I do believe, on the contrary, women are the best negotiators that are ever possible. Two reasons for that. One, women are more, like all of us said, are more intuitive. We really want to make a win-win. What is a negotiation? At the end of the day, two parties have to agree on something. For that, you need to know what the other person wants. Without that, knowing that, how do you ever come up with a win-win solution? So women have the superpower of being able to very intuitively figure out what is the real agenda that the other person has. How do you support that agenda with whatever solution you come with? So that's one part of the superpower. Part of the superpower that we can be extremely hard-nosed and very, very strict with what we want to achieve, but we can cloak it with a nice velvet glove, right? So you can be extremely pleasant, continue to be smiling, never give an inch, make sure that you get what you want. So while we do believe that women fundamentally fault ourselves as being bad negotiators, some of the best negotiators I've seen have been women. So I just wanted to make that point, and then I can now answer your other question.
All husbands will vouch for what you've just said.
I have no
go ahead, Meena.
Pavan, can I just say something here?
Yeah, okay. Then we'll bring in Meena. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So while I totally agree with Meena that when it comes to getting the job done, we're excellent negotiators. We are bad negotiators when it comes to ourselves and getting the terms and conditions at the workplace that we want.
You know, another woman on another show said that we are not so bad negotiators. We make our husbands ask for raises. That's who we are being compared to. So we actually they are doing our bidding. We have the remote control in our hands. Go ahead, Meena.
I agree with Vasundhara that women tend to sell ourselves short. And that's the reason why I want to underline how great negotiators we actually are, in the hope that some of us, some of the people on this conference can take the courage that not just for the business, but for ourselves also, we can be excellent negotiators. And we need to actually do that. We have the superpower, no doubt about that. Now, coming to the question that Pavan asked me about fundraising and the women entrepreneurs and challenges that they face and what could they do better. So there are a few challenges that come up with women entrepreneurs for two reasons. One is that especially if the women entrepreneurs are in their early ages, they are in their late 20s or mid 30s, there is a lot of questions in the mind of the private equity or the venture capital funders as to whether life-changing moments that are about to come surely are going to distract you from your path. That said, many of them are too probably polite to ask that question, and hence that unsaid elephant remains in the room, which nobody has addressed. So you may do a great job of pitching your product, but you have not, again, back to the question of knowing what the real agenda is there in people's mind, you've not addressed that. Now, one of the things that any young entrepreneur who comes to me for advice, I would say, put it out there. Clearly state what your objectives are, what your life goals are, how you're going to make it work. So what if you have a baby? You're going to go right through that and still deliver the business goals that you have set up for. And in my own case, when I started my first company in the year 2000, I had a 6-month-old child when I started a 24/7 BPO company. And it worked very well. I really took very good care in it. The company was a great success and we sold it. The investor did not ask me the question out of politeness, as most men would be very too polite to ask that question. But I made it very clear that this is something I have the support system. I'm going to make it work 24/7, or if I have to work 28/7, I can do it because of whatever reasons. So that is one big unsaid thing. The second challenge is, as far as funding is concerned, there are very few women PEs and very few women venture capitalists. That is a problem, because as there are not enough women who are there as on the other side when you're raising money, the conversations tend to be a little one-sided, and it's that's not something that you can as an individual change, but that's something that the system has to change. The third is women, when they go pitch to a venture capital or a PE fund, they tend to, again, coming back to the point of selling that Vasundhara said, they sell themselves short. They go with a little bit of diffidence around their ability to sell, their ability to raise money, investor relationship. They go in with it with this thought in their mind that they are very good at the product, they are very good at knowing how to create a right business environment or build the teams, etc. But maybe they need support in the selling or in the execute or in the raising of money or the financial matters. I would say that no, that's not true. School yourself well in advance. Learn all the terms. Get somebody to advise you beforehand. What is the meaning of a good term sheet? What are the terms that are good for you? What are the terms that are bad for you? What can come back and bite you back later? Please school yourself. Go confidently. Face your investor in the eye and say all those things, so that you're not looking around trying to find somebody else who can answer those questions for you. So those would be the 3 points that I have to make on this aspect.
Excellent, super points. In fact, you have said that, or the backdrop of what you're saying is, today we have the greatest technology which has liberated women, which is the birth control pill. But that discussion is still there. That discussion is hanging in the room, that what will be your life stages? How will you, when are you going to start a family, etc. And a woman should not ignore it and think that it will go away. She has to bring up those points in the right manner and at the right time. Also, a woman cannot have some imaginary person who she can depend on to answer the questions which she cannot handle. She has to know all the answers. And on this note, I was going through Daniel Pink's research, Meena, and it was really good. So I thought I would share it with with the audience here. Daniel Pink, in his sales research, is coming out with many ideas which might specially suit a woman who would not be the aggressive salesperson who's closing again and again and again. That might not suit her very much, but his research is worth a look. Great points. Coming lastly to Anjali, and then we will close the session, and I'll hand it over to Siddharth. Anjali, any last comments?
To add up to Meena's and your point, Pawan, I think sometimes what we miss as women is a mentor, a coach and a mentor. And I think it's a lifetime thing. It's not about our teacher in a college and, the mentor in IIMs, IITs. It's a lifetime mentor. So one can be a professional mentor. One can be, I'm looking forward now, Meena to be my mentor. So we can learn. We can learn a lot from her. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Meena, life has come full circle for you. You might have felt that I should have been a doctor. If you have come full circle, because now doctors are willing to coach with you. So great discussion. Really enjoyed. There are some more questions which we will address. I will ask Siddharth to send to the panelists, and they can offline give the answers. And but it was a great discussion. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed, and I'll pass it back to Siddharth.
So thank you very much, ma'ams and sir. Such a wonderful discussion. We're all inspired by today's conversation. And thank you to our members and guests in the audience for joining us today and staying till the end. Along with the weekly webinar series, we will soon be taking these discussions on the exclusive platform, which we're curating for leaders across our 4 sectors, which are healthcare, energy, e-mobility, and real estate. Whether you would like to engage with us on the platform or as learners, our leaders are invited us to connect for membership to join the healthcare circle and also get access to the other allied industry circles which we are forming. So thank you very much, ma'ams and sir. Once again, it was an absolute privilege to have you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.